to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today just released a new book and is a self-made millionaire who has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, ABC World News, and Forbes. He's also the host of the successful YouTube channel Vision Victory. Daniel Ameduri is the co-founder of the Wealth Research Group and the author of the book Don't Save for Retirement. Daniel, welcome back to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's a wonderful show focused on the right thing, the profits.
That's right. Well, the way I came up with the name for the show is, I thought in my head, well, you actually have to purchase something before you can profit from it. So, yeah. Like I said, you just released your book, Don't Save for Retirement. I've been reading that for the past 3 nights and making notes as I went through. Really enjoyed the book. So I encourage anybody out there to go pick it up. Where can you find it?
You can find it on Amazon. It's everywhere, but Amazon's the easiest, of course. And then we have set up a page at futuremoneytrends.com, futuremoneytrends.com/save, just /save. You can actually get the first chapter and the intro, which has me and my wife starting at a bankruptcy attorney's office. And you can read that for free. And then it'll have a link to the Amazon as well.
Yeah. Well, actually, that intro, I can relate personally to that. I've seen family members go through the bankruptcy process. I hit rock bottom at one point as well. What does it feel like, when you're sitting there and, spoiler alert, you say you didn't actually declare bankruptcy. But what was going through your mind at that point, sitting there? You talk about your wife and how she's feeling. What's going through your mind, and how did you really get through that?
It was probably definitely I was in a depressed state. I'd lost a lot of money, had a lot of foreclosures. And here I have this wonderful wife. I've known her since, or we've been dating. She was 15, I was 16. And I had always had this attraction to money, never materialism, but money. And I thought it was a game to me, and I loved it, and I loved reading about it. And I always felt that things would be great. We would become free and independent and financially free. And that moment, definitely not. I was like, it's over. I'm washed up. I tried. I failed. It's done. And I was really in a defeated state. My wife's encouragement, and then it was actually her decision. If it was me, I would have filed the bankruptcy. But we had this one duplex, and even though it was originally paid off and we'd put some new debt on it, it was still something we owned, and she just didn't want to let it go. And that is why we ended up not filing bankruptcy, even though we had to deal with it, right? We had to negotiate with the credit card companies and deal with all the foreclosures.
Yeah. And, you mentioned your depressed state. How do you even wrap your mind around it? And how do you claw yourself out? Because I know it's so tough to go from being in that space in your head to fighting your way out of it. So how did you make that happen?
Again, my wife's encouragement to start a YouTube channel, and that really helped. So I would get to talk about the financial space and money again, and the stock market. And of course, it was a very exciting time with the 07, 08, 09 area. And it was fun. So it brought back fun. And at the time, I went and got a job as a working in a grocery store. My wife was still a public school teacher. And that's kind of where the journey begins. We really started to just save. And the initial goal of cutting spending and saving was just to not be poor. And of course, over time, it evolves into, hey, once you start cutting spending and you got a lot of extra money, what's the best thing to do with it? And I was like, well, I don't like the idea of putting it away for 35 years and maybe it working out. What are the rich doing? And that was my next question. What are the rich doing?
Yeah. And, this being a real estate show, it's always nice to see that you got into real estate at a young age 18. What originally prompted you to pull the trigger? Because most guys, when they're 18, have other things on their mind other than real estate.
I had a great mentor. I call him my rich dad. And he was a martial arts instructor, and he was he was a great mentor. And then at 16, I had a home economics class. There were 28 girls and 2 boys. I was very good in math at that point. So I was like, okay, I'm doing this home ec class. And they had talked about the difference between a college graduate and a high school graduate. At the time, it didn't make sense to me, any of it. So I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way. So between the mentor and my rejection of conventional wisdom very early on and conventional finance very early on, and then a combination of people like Robert Kiyosaki, how lucky, right? His book came out right when I was in high school, so that was perfect. And a combination of all that, and I was like, man, as soon as I get out of high school, I want to start investing, and real estate seemed like the most understandable thing to do. I wasn't going to analyze a stock. Anybody can buy a stock at 18, but I wasn't going to be a very good stock investor. Real estate I got. And of course, I bought my first condo right 6 months out of high school, and off we went from there. And I just kept buying them, and ultimately I confused a little bit of luck, or maybe a lot of luck, in the bubble that we had in California and the nation with brains. So that ultimately does lead to a full-blown reset in 2008 for me. But in hindsight, I'm very happy it happened, because that focus of appreciation burned me so badly that it completely flipped me with a focus on cash flow.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. Like I've been through my whole rock bottom phase as well, and like you said, you can turn it into the best thing that ever happened to you, because, I'm certainly a totally different person than I was before. And I'm sure yourself. So how essential is it for an entrepreneur to go through that pain period in order to grow?
I think it's important. Now, of course, some people listening to this may never have that experience, and good for you. And but I'll be honest with you, when I invest in management teams, let's say it doesn't matter if it's a cannabis company, real estate company, gold company, I'm always more interested in a management team that went through the 2008 crisis. I'll give you a perfect example. I love investing in Fundrise. It's a great company, and Peer Street, but both of them started way after 2008. So that does have me a little concerned, but I'm a heavy investor in them. There's another company called Watt Funding. They've been around for 75 years. I feel great sending them money. Now, they're not as tech savvy as Fundrise and Peer Street, but I think as far as entrepreneurs go, look, if you find yourself in tough times, it is a blessing. I promise you, everything is a gift, especially these bad things. They'll ultimately lead you to the road that you need to go on. They'll refine you. They'll make you more, like, I'm more conservative when I buy properties. I'm a better real estate investor because I got burned. And I think that's going to happen to any entrepreneur, any business person. Mistakes are very normal. Continuously fail forward. Just keep moving, keep proceeding.
Yeah, and when you go through the rough times, it gives you a couple more gray hairs to have the dignity to your look. So one of the very first questions I ask every guest on the show is about their real estate goals. And I found it interesting in your book, you said that goal setting should never include a dollar amount. And it's funny because lots of the answers I get from my guests do include that dollar amount. So what prompted you, to change your thinking in that way?
When it comes to business, I think you should always focus on the value you can deliver to other people, because the money will come. When it comes to real estate investments, a lot of people get stuck. I'll be honest with you. I could tell you how much real estate I own, and people say, wow, but you know what? What matters is that cash flow. How many checks are coming in the mail? And a $120,000 duplex in Tennessee can be a lot more profitable than an $800,000 duplex in California. It is what it is. Now, I don't have the bragging rights that I've got a great property in Santa Monica. I've got one in, somewhere in Tennessee. But, it doesn't matter. You focus on where you can deliver value, on the properties you buy, on the price you're getting. What kind of value can you deliver to the tenants? I treat my tenants like customers. I have had a great landlord experience. I've had many foreclosures like anybody else, and crazy things happen. But for the most part, I've got tenants who, like, their kids send me cards and stuff because I over deliver for them. Because you know what, if you want to be a landlord, who's the best landlord? Okay, let's look at Marriott and Hilton and Hyatt. Would you ever call Marriott and expect them to screw you over or to not fix your sink immediately? No, they're going to do something at a higher level. And I think that's one of the things I strive for. So rather than focus on the dollar amount, I focus on what kind of value can I provide here? What can I deliver here? If it makes sense, let's do it.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And, the other thing you mentioned is the return of your time. Time freedom is mentioned a lot when I speak with other guests. Can you talk about what time freedom and that return means for you?
So for me, ultimately, the definition of wealth is your ability to use your time the way you want. And that's my personal definition. There are many definitions of wealth. So I really press the readers to really consider that. And we do spend a little time on what is your purpose, how to find your purpose, what kind of hobbies could you perhaps monetize, what are different things that you could do, because how do you ultimately want to live your life? For some reason, a lot of people have been conditioned to believe that the best they're going to get is 3 to 4 hours in traffic on a daily commute, needing a permission slip to take a vacation, and having to go in on somebody else's terms. And I don't think that's what the apex being on the planet was made for. Was made just to be told what to do. And I really question and challenge people to say, hey, how are you spending your time? Because if you're not spending it the way you want, let's fix that.
Yeah. Well, let's backtrack then, because you had mentioned that you had to, you got a regular job, as we're rebuilding. At what point did you leave that behind and cut the cord so you could focus, 100% on your entrepreneurial pursuits?
Yeah. So I did not, I wasn't a great planner in this sense. So going back, it looks very smart, connecting the dots like Steve Jobs talks about. But look, what happened was I had the job. My wife has a job. We have a baby, and now she's really focused on how can she quit her job, because that was her passion, was to be a mom. Yeah. And I started a YouTube channel. Google took over YouTube, and I was one of the first YouTube partners. So now my hobby was making money, and I was making some money with my job. And then I started doing other advertisements on the YouTube channel, and ultimately starting the newsletter. And I quit my job when I could see that we had something here, that there was this hobby that I was doing for free for a year and a half, was making money. And I was like, we have something here. I can do this. I can pour out my heart and soul. Instead of doing it once a week on Friday, I can do this every day. And I love it. I'm doing it for free right now. I mean, literally, I would make these 30-minute YouTube videos, and I do research for 8 hours on a Friday I think I did like 400 videos, unedited, just me in front of a closet talking for 30 minutes. Yeah. And it was something I loved. So that's when I decided to quit my job. But even then, I'll tell you, I'll never forget when I resigned, because I had such a fear and scarcity mentality at the time. I remember shaking, even though, by the way, I freaking hated this job. This job was the best because it's seared in my mind how much I hated having a job. So, I mean, most people fear, I think Andy Tanner says it this way best, actually. He says, most people fear losing their job. He fears having one. And that's how I felt after that freaking grocery job.
Yeah. But you know what? It's so true. When people cut the cord, it puts you in a position where you have to perform and you have to produce. And it just being involved in real estate, I'm sure you've come across people too, that they keep themselves tethered to their job for a little bit too long, where, if they just cut that cord, they could do so much more, because they'd be so focused on building their portfolio or building, whatever other company that they're starting up. So what would you say to somebody who's maybe on the fence and they're unsure if they should take the plunge and just go full time?
I would say do what you're comfortable with, but you are ultimately going to have to be a little uncomfortable to stretch yourself and grow. So if you have a great job that you love, certainly don't quit. Enjoy your job, or figure out how you can make your employer your first client so that you can work from home or work 3 days a week, or however you want to adjust it to fit your lifestyle. And then all the big unknowns. So if you're an employee right now and you want to make that jump, there's a lot of unknowns that we kind of get fearful of. Let's do the big one, which is healthcare. Yeah. I know so many people who are totally financially independent. They could totally quit their job, enjoy their life, do whatever they want, and they're 52. And I'm like, why aren't you fishing every day or doing teaching karate, which is your passion? Like, I'm keeping this government job because it provides healthcare. And I'm like, you're going to slave away for another decade for healthcare? Healthcare is like $450 a month for an entire family. Yeah. There's all these nonprofit organizations that act as real insurance companies where you only pay if you have something wrong. When you go see the doctor, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to be a grown-up and pay $100 to visit the doctor. There's no $5 copays with real insurance. But anyway, long story short, a lot of people fear the unknown. and they shouldn't fear it because look, there's a lot of business owners and they seem to be pretty happy. So don't think that jumping from employee to business owner is somehow going to throw you into some sort of unknown land. It's doable. A lot of people do it. And, I think you'd be happier once you stretch yourself and not get uncomfortable. But you're going to have to go through that discomfort. We all had to. It is a leap of faith in the beginning. But I'll tell you, once you're a business owner or full-time real estate investor for a while, you kind of look back and go, man, how risky was it to have a job? Man, the boss could have woken up on the wrong side of the bed and screwed me. They could have thrown me under the bus if something happened if you work for the government. I mean, it's very risky actually having a job, and especially risky if you're investing into the conventional retirement.
Yeah, well, 100%. And one of the other things you speak about in your book is overspending. And, you talk about how, people will contact you, they're making $200 something thousand a year, and they end up with money problems. What's going on if people making what most would consider a decent living are almost the most financially strapped people in society?
It's quite common. As you know, there's been some recent studies that show that Americans are $500 away from an unexpected expense from being broke. Yeah. And the average American, they're making $60,000 a year. Households are $100,000. So if you consider that what we live in is not normal, but perceived as normal, a fake reality essentially. It's not normal to have to spread out your car payments for 5 to 7, 8 years. It's not normal to buy a house 7 to 10 times your income, but it has been allowed and perceived as normal because the guy on the right's doing it, my friends are doing it, my sister's doing it, my brother-in-law is doing it. I can't let my brother-in-law look better than me. It's just all these crazy things put in our head from years of conditioning in the school system, years of conditioning from corporate advertising, not necessarily propaganda, but advertising. Like, I'm not going to get mad at them, but all those things are conditioned. And I said, hey, I'm a doctor. I better go get a Lexus and a beautiful McMansion. So that's what happens. But the reality is you should live a very sustainable life until you're financially free. Always live a sustainable life, but you shouldn't be buying luxuries until you have the assets that can pay for those luxuries. And that's very important to understand. It's something I learned from Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah. And, one thing that really struck me was when with your 2 dogs and they got sick and how committed you were, you actually gave the dogs to a family friend to stay committed to your spending.
Yeah. So the dogs were about $150 a month. There were 2 wiener dogs. We had just had our son, and it was just, we were cutting expenses. We weren't eating out. We had cut meat from the grocery store, just save on money. We got rid of DirecTV. We got rid of gym memberships. We cut everywhere we could cut. We would have even shopped at discount grocery stores. Moved, which was one of the hardest things is just moving, but it's the biggest thing you can do to save money. And we also got rid of the pets because they were costing us $150 a month, and I was like, this is not smart right now. Right now, we're trying to get it so my wife can quit her job. We're trying to create a very sustainable future. We're trying to pay off our house. And it was just something we had to do. So tough thing to do, to be honest with you. But I'm happy we did it. They went to a great home and they live very good lives. And, it's very unfortunate, but in hindsight, I do believe I did the right thing. I take a lot of flack for that, to be honest with you. A lot of people think that was horrible, but I'm just trying to show people that when you Google how to save money and it tells you switch your checking account, switch your credit card, and, stop drinking lattes. Like, look, screw that. Yeah. Do all that, yes. But what you really need to do is you need to cut down to the marrow in the beginning. If you're really serious, you want to do this, like, there are ways to live a very sustainable life. And I'm not talking about permanent minimalism, which is kind of a trend now. Though nothing wrong with those people. Good for them. Live free lives. Man, beautiful. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying, look, do this for like 6 months to 2 years and just cut back and watch it snowball and compound on you, because what's going to happen is all the money you save and you're not wasting anymore, you're going to put it into things that send checks to your mailbox.
Yeah. And that's what you call the wealth dividend, right?
Absolutely. It's good decisions compounding on themselves. So what happened when I got financially independent in 2012, I don't even think we might not have even been millionaires. Probably were millionaires by then, but it was barely a millionaire, net worth millionaires, not liquid millionaires. There you go. Yeah. And we were financially independent, but we were still driving a 2003 Nissan Altima we lived in a house that we bought for 95 grand in the desert of California. Okay. So that's what we did. But those decisions, it's slowly 2013, 2014, and all of a sudden by the time 2015 around, we had built up so much passive income and active income from doing things we love that now we were living that life that people imagine, like, oh, we're, you first class wherever you go.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a huge history nerd, so I really enjoyed when you went into the history of retirement and pensions and all of that stuff. Because one of the things with history, if you're able to look back over the past 300 years, you really see how everything's connected and how one thing happens and that's why the next thing happens and that's why we are where we are today. So can you just describe briefly, what happened, post World War II, at the start of the 20th century with retirement and pensions?
Yeah, well, surprisingly, Adam and Eve did not have a 401k plan.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they think this is just how it goes. And it's almost annoying when you see these people make these like 30, 40, 50-year projections as if it's just always been this way. And it hasn't. These 401ks came in the 70s and really got implemented in the 80s. The retirement age of 65, we really tried to track down what happened. We found a source that showed the best argument for it was that there was two German politicians running against each other. The retirement age was 70, and the other one, did what politicians are doing today. He's like, oh, 70, I'll make it 65. And that's what FDR and all these guys use. Let's just do 65. There was no thought out. There was no study done or anything like that. But for some reason, we're all still stuck on 65 is the year to let go of the financial life. But certainly after World War II, not only did you have a change in how the pensions were being provided because many companies found them unsustainable, but at the same point in time, government froze wages and employers had to incentivize employees with new things. And that's how I bet you they regret ever offering to buy somebody's healthcare because now they're mandatory. They're on the hook for it. So the employee became something else, which ultimately leads to the trend we're seeing in the last 20 years that the millennials are experiencing, where an employer would much rather have an independent contractor or a freelancer because unfortunately with all the regulatory environment, especially in states like California, you have an employee can be quite burdensome. There are many corporations. You get up to 50 people. You almost have 2 attorneys on staff now just dealing with compliance. So between that trend and the retirement experiment, which really it changed radically. Once the pensions were gone and people started living longer, no one really adjusted. In fact, they got away with the guarantees and they filled it with 401ks and IRAs. And those are very speculative if you think about it. You have no idea what your tax rate's going to be in 30 years from now. It happens to be the lowest tax rate in the last 75, 80 years right now. So, you ask yourself, is it going to be higher or lower in 20 years if you follow that plan? But let's be real. The baby boomers had the best setup in any generation. And it's falling to pieces, this retirement idea. The World War II generation, it obviously worked better because these 401ks were almost like the icing on the cake. They already had the pension. They had a Social Security that was better adjusted to inflation. And let's be real, that like the first person who received Social Security, she put in $28 and she pulled out like 50 grand out of it.
Yeah. And, even look back, let's say 150 to 200 years ago, you would work until you dropped if you were middle class. Weekends did not even exist. You were working all the time until, your time was done. And now it's like you're playing Russian roulette with your retirement. I can't even imagine relying on a 401k, whenever I decide to pack it in. That's just nuts.
Well, and it's very unhealthy for the mind. You've seen people pass away after they retire because they lose a purpose, going about during the day. You can't just sit home and watch Netflix all day. But also imagine saving, I've witnessed this firsthand. Imagine saving for 30, 40 years. And then all of a sudden clicking on your brain that now it's okay to spend. But at the same point in time, you telling yourself you can spend, you just cut off the active income. You just killed the cash cow, which was you. And I have not seen very many retirees have a success in that transition because that's difficult, turning off the active income and then just drawing from this pile of money. I don't know about you, but that would put my stomach in knots if every month I'm getting older and every month my pile of cash is shrinking. That would make me uncomfortable. And of all things, they're telling these seniors to put the money in the stock market, which is very volatile. Volatility doesn't equal risk, but volatility for someone who's old isn't smart. You can own the best stock, and let's say you own Disney. Hey, that's the safest stock. I have no doubt that Disney will be around in 100 years from now. But could Disney go from $140 to $50 because of a stock market crash? Hell yeah, it can. So I'm very uncomfortable for people who have to tie their wealth to the stock market.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, the word has to get out that, we can't be investing like it's 1980, like you say in the book, and we have to really push passive income. Talk to us about, the whole idea behind passive income and why it's so important for people to start looking for those assets.
So the middle class invests in a way that they're speculating, because they're always focused on capital appreciation, whether it's a penny stock or a 401k or even their personal residence. The rich, they're not trying to get rich. They're trying to get richer. So they think a little differently. They're not looking for an overnight success. They're looking at, number one, they want to preserve. Number two, they're looking for income. They want to continue to grow it and pile it and stack it. And if you look at the habits and the investment options for the middle class, they're radically different than the wealthy. The reason there's such a focus on passive income, and I encourage people in the book to not just compound it, which of course we all want to compound, but I also encourage people to spend it. You want to, enjoy the fruits of your labor, not only in being able to spend it on something you might enjoy, like a nice dinner, but you use that income to buy more income or pay a bill. My very first bill I paid with passive income was my water bill. It was only $50, but it felt great. I was not paying that bill anymore as far as I was concerned. The tenant was. Yeah. So look at it that way and really focus on building up passive income. Once you start to get 3, 4, 5 different sources of income, it's actually exciting to get the mail, because you never know what's going to be on the other side of that box. There's probably going to be a check waiting for you.
Yeah, that's so true. And, on this show, obviously we like to push real estate because, we're a real estate show, but, real estate's so amazing because of the leveraging opportunities that you don't really get with the stock. So can you compare maybe purchasing stocks versus purchasing a property?
Yeah. So the easiest way, and I'm sure the show's gone over it, is if I have $10,000 or let's say $20,000, I can buy $20,000 worth of stock. For most people, that is what they would do. If you have a house and you have $20,000, or if you have $20,000, you can buy a $100,000 property, rental property. And of course, if it goes up 10%, you're going to capture a 50% gain on your $20,000, because that entire asset's going to go up, which is $110,000 now. So you've made $10,000, and you're also getting cash flow off of a much larger asset. Now, for any stock investor listening out there, I understand there are call options, and you can technically do something like that. But let's be real, it's not as easy, and you'd have to be very sophisticated to do that. For all intents and purposes, real estate is the best hard asset that you can get leverage on.
Yeah. And not to mention the tax benefits that go along with it too, because it's not just what you make, it's what you keep in your pocket. The other thing you really mentioned that, I found very interesting was you talked about whole life insurance policies and how you can borrow against those to invest in other in other assets. That's one thing I'm doing myself, but most people don't even know that that's even an option.
Yeah, I would recommend listeners spend a few months researching this. It literally took me a long time, because I was like a lot of people, conditioned from the Dave Ramseys of the world to hate whole life insurance and only believe in term. And it took me a long time, but now, once I figured it out, I'll tell you, I think I figured it out probably sometime in 2012, and it is 2019, and I have 19 policies, 19 whole life policies. Each of my children have 2 of their own. So I'm a big believer in it, and I am using it to dual compound. It's essentially you're using your cash as collateral. It's compounding at an internal rate of about 5%, but you can also borrow against your own policy from the insurance company, very low rates, about 4.5%. And then I put it in things that make 10%. So you're looking at the same dollars being used twice. Again, it is a very complicating thing. especially because some of the names are like bank on yourself, but you're not really banking on yourself. You're not borrowing your own money. You're actually borrowing the insurance's money, but the insurance company doesn't run your credit or anything. You just literally call them and say, hey, I want $50,000 tomorrow, and they'll do it if you've got $50,000 in cash value, because they know that if you don't pay it back eventually or keep your policy current, the money is sitting there. So there's zero risk of default for you. So they just need your name and your policy number, and they'll mail you the check. It's about a 4.5% interest rate right now, but you can take that money and then use it. Now, in the meantime, that cash value is still growing. So you're actually growing both pools of capital. Again, not the easiest thing to explain on a podcast or even a book. I would highly recommend people really take some serious time on YouTube to watch these videos. I personally use a group called Paradigm Life, Jenny Steed, great woman. She's done, almost all my policies, and, just spend some time researching, because you really want to understand it. Because I'll be honest, my first one was real small because I didn't fully get it yet. I'll tell you, the last 2 or 3, they're monsters, because now I really get it.
Yeah. We actually did an hour episode on the show with Tom Rakowski, who we went really in depth with it. So I'd encourage anybody to search out that episode. It was a really good one. So that brings us to how we set up, the kids and our future generation to learn about wealth and financial management. My son, he's almost 3. And that's one thing that's always on my mind is how can I pass along, the paradigm shift that I experienced with, as it relates to money to him. How have you done it with the younger generation, and what tips can you give me and somebody else out there?
It's probably my favorite topic, and I could have written a book on it, and maybe I will in the future. Maybe we will together.
Yeah.
Look, I involve the children in everything that we do. When we go to close a property, they come with me. When we go to look at a fixer-upper, they come with me. We play regularly. We play a game called Net Worth. It's like Uno, but you're paying down debt. We play both versions of cash flow, one for children, one for adults. They love it. They play Monopoly, but you can also mix it up. There's Dino Monopoly, Mickey Mouse Monopoly. There's all sorts of Monopolies. We play all of these games regularly. For any parent that's listening, most areas, major cities have money camps during the summer. Some of them even have them during the spring. I know Denver has a great one. San Diego has a great one. There's a lot of those out there for your children as well. And I allowed the children to buy stocks with their money because I'm big into not just keeping the cash, but actually having the money make money for them. So, but with, of course, parental guidance. So they own Disney, they own Costco, they own companies they can relate to. Because I also want them to understand what's great about Disney, what's great about Costco. It's they over-deliver in value. You always feel great when you leave Costco. Do you ever care when you leave Ralph's or Vons or Stater Brothers or any of these other grocery stores? No, who cares if I leave Safeway? Nobody gives a crap. You feel great when you leave Costco. Same thing with Disney. It's just a great company, and there's many ways and examples they can see how they can over-deliver value. Because ultimately in life, the most important thing you can teach your children is the equation for money. You have to deliver value to other people. And if you over-deliver, you're going to make even more. So I want them to really understand that lesson that, hey, it's not just about, becoming employable and getting a job. How do you invest? What do you do with the money? And of course, I'm always very mindful when they want to shop and spend. I do make them spend their own money if they want to buy a toy. And they're always shocked how expensive the toys are. It was funny. My son was with me at the grocery store yesterday, and we just bought a handful of items, and I swiped the card and it was like $90. And he's like, Dad, I thought that would be $20. But that's good because we went over the whole receipt and we saw what was, what the cost was. And it's good to let them understand it, because what's happened now is so many people are illiterate about money. And then the next generation behind them is illiterate. And now people are living in a mess. They're spending too much. They don't know what to do with their money. And it's very unfortunate. And I think the best solution is really for parents to take an active role very, very early on. Cambridge University did a study and said financial habits are built by 7 years old. That's brutal. Wow. Don't start teaching about money until they're 16, maybe 20 years old.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me, somebody recently sent me a video of a kid crying. He was playing some sort of board game, but he had to pay taxes and he lost, 40% of his money. He was in tears. But that's a wake up to real life, unless you own real estate.
I always take a scoop of their ice cream and I tell them that's the government. I'm taking my cut.
Nice. So what are your thoughts? Because there's a big push to get, financial education back into the schools. The way I think about it is that, it's my responsibility to make sure my son is equipped to make those decisions and put him in touch with the right people. What are your thoughts? Do you think we should be pushing that in schools, or should it be on the parent to educate?
I think it's 100% on the parent, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the schools teaching it. In my school, I learned how to write a check. I think that's about all we learned. Certainly, I don't know why they don't have more scenarios and more dollar figures in front of whatever problems they're doing, whether it's math or reading or whatever literature. Why not spend some time in high school and read a book about investing? Let's say Ben Franklin's book or Benjamin Graham's book, excuse me. I can't think of not Security Analyst. That's too difficult. But the other one that he wrote. Anyway, a book that Warren Buffett wrote or something. So I don't see anything wrong with it. I would be concerned that the retirement cartel would shove some curriculum down the high school teacher who knows nothing about it, throw it, and now all of a sudden they're teaching basically things that are going to hurt them and lose them money. So that's my one concern. They're going to tell everybody, just put your money in mutual funds. But I think anything would be helpful. But certainly if you're a parent, it's on you 100%. You need to teach your children. You need to show them how to do this. If you're suffering financially, it doesn't have to keep repeating.
Yeah. And, I think the big thing is it's the people who you speak with that can open your mind to the different possibilities. And that's what's so amazing, with a podcast like this, your YouTube channel, your newsletter, you have so much good content and messaging from somebody who's actually achieving at a high level. Because that's my one concern, if you're bringing financial education into the schools, the person teaching that content doesn't have the grasp that somebody like yourself would, teaching the same concept. So I think a lot would get lost in that translation.
Yeah, that is a great point because, you have access to literally the best financial minds in the world. You could YouTube Ray Dalio or Robert Kiyosaki or any of these guys, Warren Buffett giving a speech to a college. That's all on YouTube. It's freely available. A lot of these people are even accessible through Twitter. I've tweeted out a few of these guys and they tweeted back. I remember when I called up Jim Rogers, there was a phone number on his website and I called it and he answered. I was like, holy shit, this is Jim Rogers. He's a billionaire. Just answered the phone. And I was like, I better say something. He's going to be pissed if I don't ask him to do something. So, a lot of these people are more accessible than ever. But yeah, I totally agree with you that the big risk is that you just have unqualified people teaching propaganda.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, Daniel, I don't want to spoil the whole book for everybody, but I do encourage everybody to get a copy. Like I said, I read it, thoroughly enjoyed it. So if somebody's looking to reach out, get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing with you and your business, where can they find you online?
Yeah, please go to futuremoneytrends.com/save, and you'll be able to read the introduction to the book and the first chapter. And it'll also subscribe you to a free weekly wealth digest. It shares what I'm doing with my wife and I right now, as far as and we also share our history, our journey, but also where am I writing checks? What new ideas have I come across? I love sharing everything free of charge with my subscribers.
Yeah. And the book is Don't Save for Retirement. So go out and get a copy. Danny, just want to say thanks so much for taking the time coming on and sharing those very valuable tips and that information with us.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, pleasure was all mine. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.